There is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat. And we have witnesses here who have told you that they can shut down our missile silos. They can stop a rocket going into space that's a test.
An object came into the frame, shot a beam of light at the warhead, flew up to the top, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew around the direction it was flying, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew down, shot another beam of light at the warhead, and flew out the same way it came in.
We have witnesses here who have worked in the classified departments who have the courage to come forward here to support what Werner von Braun told me back in 1974 to 77. And the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat.
How far back does it go? Well, Sumerian tablets show a man in a disc that flies in a position where the star is in context with the Pleiades. On Sumerian stela, you'll see the bird-headed gods like the Egyptians, the disc that flies, a crescented world, not a moon, in context with the Pleiades.
There is a lie being told to everyone.
eternal.
That voice is speaking Sumerian, the oldest language in human history. You can go into any Sumerian exhibit and see etchings and sculptures of men in spacesuits and oxygen masks. Rockets that look like
There is a fascinating aspect of sacred geometry known as Metatron's cube, and this is what it looks like. I've been making mandalas based on this archetype for a really long time, over 20 years, thinking about it, contemplating it, meditating on it, just listening to it all these years. So the first question is, who is this guy, Metatron? Who is this being known as Metatron? Where'd he come from? If you investigate, you find that Metatron was an archangel who was mentioned in Islamic, Judaic, and Christian mythologies, medieval mythologies. He was considered to be the scribe of God. So this would make the archangel Metatron the equivalent of the ancient Egyptian scribe of the gods known as Thoth, Hermes. Now, according to legend, a scribe of God would understand the root principles of creation, which are almost always associated with sacred geometry. In fact, the archangel Metatron is many times pictured with or holding a cube. So that's a little bit about Metatron, the guy Metatron. But the graphic known as Metatron's cube didn't show up till later, when a medieval Italian mathematician named Leonardo Pisano discovered it. So the next question is, why and how did Leonardo come to call this particular graphic Metatron's cube? Well, the answer is simple. Number one, he probably had read, or not probably, he read the histories of Metatron. He was familiar with the legends. And number two, he was also familiar with sacred geometry, probably initiate in one of the schools, one or more of the schools, that held those secrets. So between those two things, it points to the connection that Metatron's cube has with sacred geometry. And it traces right back to nature's first pattern and the 13 very special circles that are found inside the fourth consecutive circle of nature's first pattern. That's where it comes from. And when you connect the centers of those 13 circles, you get Metatron's cube. Oh yeah. Leonardo Pisano discovered, and this is the really cool part, Leonardo Pisano discovered that you could create an illusion of all 5 of the Platonic solids in this graphic that he had discovered. And he called it Metatron's cube. Connecting the edges of 4 equilateral triangles creates the tetrahedron. Connecting the edges of 6 squares creates the hexahedron, or cube. Connecting the edges of 8 equilateral triangles creates the octahedron. Connecting the edges of 12 pentagons creates the dodecahedron. And connecting the edges of 20 equilateral triangles creates the icosahedron. Wow. Look at that. That's a tetrahedron. That is a tetrahedron. 4 sides. This is the root crystalline archetype right here. three-dimensional sacred geometry very close to source, extremely close to source. Now, when you systematically study this phenomena of Metatron's cube, you discover that the first three Platonic solids, that's the tetrahedron, the hexahedron, and the octahedron, are perfectly blueprinted inside this two-dimensional pattern. But when you get to the next two, the dodecahedron and the icosahedron, you find that they are not perfectly blueprinted in Metatron's cube. The dodecahedron is almost perfectly blueprinted in Metatron's cube, but 6 additional short lines must be added in order to complete the form. The icosahedron is another story, as the illusion is definitely not an accurate blueprint. This fact discourages many of the most investigative students of sacred geometry and causes some of them to negate the significance of Metatron's cube. This is very understandable, but I believe unfortunate. So one of my major goals for this piece is to re-establish the credibility of Metatron's cube. And this is the whole key right here. Metatron's cube is a transcendental form. It naturally reduces in size, smaller and smaller and smaller Metatron's cubes, and larger and larger and larger Metatron's cubes, all relating to one another empirically, expanding all the way to infinity and all the way into infinity. And with the additional centers that those transcendental aspects of Metatron's cube create, it's very easy to get a perfect blueprint of both the dodecahedron and the icosahedron. This is really significant, and this makes Metatron's cube actually work as a perfect blueprint. Now, this is the most interesting and esoteric point as far as I'm concerned. Metatron's cube beautifully illustrates the mental nature of the universe through this unfolding of two-dimensional realities into three-dimensional realities.